Hi guys, welcome to the VENDO podcast. Holy cow, we have several new guests here. Matt, smile please. This is the first podcast ever. Great appearance. I'm going to go into intros real quick, but first and foremost, thank you guys all for checking out our video today. Today we're going to dive into mobile versus desktop data, new data point that Amazon has released. Super excited to dive in. My name is Vinny. I'm the Director of Account Strategist here at VENDO. Maybe I should slow down a little bit. I'm going too fast. But the rest of the team is going to go through intros real quick, and then we'll dive into the topic of conversation today. So Delaney, make an intro, please.
Awesome. Thanks, Vinny. Hi, everyone. I'm Delaney. This is my third podcast now, so not as new as Matt to the podcast world, but it's great to meet everyone. I am an account manager on both the Amazon and the Walmart side, but of course today we'll be talking all things Amazon. Matt, I'll pass to you.
Thanks, Delaney. As everybody has mentioned, this is my first podcast appearance at VENDO. My name is Matt. I'm also an account manager and very excited to dive into the data that Amazon's releasing.
Awesome. And I am Russell. I think this might be my fourth podcast, but I'm not sure. So I'm kind of a seasoned veteran at this point, but I'm the senior data analyst here at VENDO. So really excited to be talking about what we're getting at today.
Awesome. No, thank you guys so much for jumping on. And to our audience, this is a very important topic for all of us, right? The fact that Amazon has just released these data points along with other data points that we're going to come back to and have separate conversations later in the future, in the near future, in fact. We know that Amazon has made a big push on releasing mobile data to business reports. And that's across all brands. If you're on Seller Central, you can easily go to your business reports, toggle onto the right feature of the hide and show column filter within your business reports, and you'll be able to toggle on mobile sessions and page views. And that should be able to give you a quick view in terms of that data that Amazon has now provided for us. And it's very important for us sellers because we become more, we take that data, we're able to diagnose and analyze it and definitely put some action items there. So I'll start with you both, Delaney and Matt. I'll put you guys in the hot seat here, but what does this new data point mean for you guys? Like, how are you guys taking this data point and applying it for your brands from a strategic view, just from a reporting perspective? Just throw everything at me.
Yeah, Vinny, I think a lot of what people aren't realizing is that before a lot of this mobile, or all of this mobile traffic wasn't being captured at all. So they were only capturing desktop traffic, which of course was shooting conversion rates through the roof. I know that particularly compared to other retailers, everyone's like, wow, Amazon has such a strong conversion rate. But obviously you are missing a bulk of the business there. If you're not getting any mobile traffic data, of course your conversion rate is going to be so high because consumers are now more apt to shop on mobile. I know specifically for me, I'm always just buying things on Prime through my mobile device, so it definitely makes sense. What I'm seeing for some of my brands is as much as 2/3, 3/4 of the traffic is now coming from mobile. So obviously Russell has to have a tougher conversation with the brand of, hey, not to worry here, conversion rates were inflated before, but now we have much more actionable insights because we can get a gauge on the real conversion rate that Amazon's applying or giving to us. Of course, we don't see that conversion data broken out by desktop versus mobile yet. So I think that may be to come. But if you're looking at 2/3 of your traffic coming from mobile, that is just enormous of what we were previously missing out on, and we were super excited to see that. I know Matt can speak more on the optimizations that we're recommending and what exactly we're doing with the data too.
Definitely, and knowing once you sort of analyze that data and see where a bulk of your traffic is coming from, you can use that to kind of inform how you want to lay out your detail page. Knowing that on mobile you get less space in the title for potential customers to come and buy the product. Knowing that the A+ content is going to be laid out a little bit differently, you're going to want to make sure that it's easily scrollable on mobile. Whereas thinking on desktop, you have about 3 or 4 times the width of the screen. So just really making sure to take that into consideration, knowing that if a majority of your traffic is coming from mobile, that you're definitely going to want to make sure that your product pages are optimized for that experience to increase that conversion rate.
Also brand story, right, Matt? Like that was a feature that Amazon released earlier on this year. Like I think that was only hinting at the idea of they would be eventually releasing some of this mobile traffic, because that is the most optimized mobile feature almost that you can get through Amazon. It's right above the A+ content. When we're looking at that, that's one of the biggest pulls for this mobile traffic. And also, when we're looking at New Year, New You, and Prime Day, I believe the sessions data goes back almost a year or so. So as we start to prep for Prime Day, I know Amazon's releasing a bunch of dates and when you need to submit deals, and we're preparing for all of that within Vendo and building those strategies. But now we can look back at Prime Day 2021 and see, okay, what did these metrics look like then? Should we be optimizing for mobile more than we were before? And how are we going to be going about that, seeing that maybe, yeah, 2/3 of your traffic is coming from mobile during Prime. Also seeing the same thing for some of our health and household beauty brands, a lot of our New Year, New You brands. I feel like that is even more so, it's going to be equally important, right? But then I'm also seeing, on the other hand, that some brands have a much more even split during New Year, New You, and during Prime. And that may be solely because, during those times, people are, their average basket size is a lot higher. So they're literally sitting down at their computer, making those purchases with a lot more intent rather than just, picking up their mobile device and buying things through there.
That's it. Let's call it a wrap. Delaney just threw up all these different data points. No, that's amazing. And the one thing is, diving in a little bit more on that call out Prime, right? They gave us a year back window of data. I would say start looking at the days ahead of Prime last year, because then you can see that traffic does start to pick up. And it makes sense, right? People are window shopping, trying to see what the best deals are, or perhaps just adding to cart so that when Prime comes, they can convert, right? Because that's the bigger discount. And then leading out, you can also see some traffic still, compared to average, still high. So it's some of those metrics that we want to keep in mind. And speaking to the brand story feature that you talked about, it all adds to time on page, right? It's another one of those metrics that Amazon hasn't released yet, but I'm sure it's good. Hopefully they do it eventually, where all of that time that a customer spends on the page, on the PDP, interacting, understanding your product, so that we can then drive conversion. It's definitely a signal that the algorithm will consider, so that it can rank you higher. So with that said, Russell, I want to give you the floor, because you're in the trenches, you're downloading the data. Customers, clients of ours are asking you really tough, questions in regards to what we're doing as a business and how we're really maximizing these data points. But yeah, walk us through what you're seeing.
Yeah, so let's just start with the client side, right? This resets a lot of our baselines, as Delaney mentioned, which is a tough conversation, but it also has some helpful points, right? Because we, as an agency, we look at how we're performing on Amazon, but the client is also looking at how they're performing on D2C and how that compares to how we're performing on Amazon. So suddenly all these conversion rate numbers being reset, the client has to go back and start reevaluating, right? So we need to make sure that we're providing them with that updated information, but also making sure that we're holding on to those data points that we know aren't going to change, right? We know that customer acquisition on Amazon is almost always going to be cheaper than D2C, things like that. So making sure that the client gets the latest numbers, but also putting it in perspective, right? Making sure that the client knows that just because these numbers change, does that actually have an impact, or is it just smoke and mirrors, right? That's an important thing. The other thing is, from a spend standpoint, this update was only rolled out across the business reports on Seller Central. So a lot of other things are going to be impacted. For example, advertising, our conversion rates there aren't going to change. External, those numbers are going to change. But before, we were doing some comparisons in terms of, okay, on Seller Central, what's our conversion rate compared to advertising? So a lot of those comparison numbers, we're kind of having to just reset those baselines, making sure that while we're getting these learnings, because Amazon just rolled this out less than 2 weeks ago, so everybody's trying to catch up. So making sure that we're managing things on the client side, as well as really getting into the depths of what learnings we can get, right? We're looking at things across categories, for example, within category, within product lines. What's that new baseline that we need to be looking at? And then just purely from a mobile versus desktop standpoint, as the team kind of just mentioned, there's a lot of great findings there. Primarily, it validates a lot of things that we thought we knew before, right? We always assumed that Amazon probably most of the traffic was for mobile, but this confirms things. But it also makes us ask so many other questions. For example, what's the conversion rate on mobile versus conversion rate on desktop? Not something we can get now, but that's another thing that we're really hopeful that Amazon might actually roll out moving further on, because they have been rolling out a lot of new features lately, and we think that it's something that's a focus of theirs. We confirmed it with like some of their people, so really hopeful and really interested in what additional data points and rollouts they'll come up with later on.
No, that's a great summary. Do you want to walk us through what you're seeing? Maybe that's a better, just a quick view in terms of data from Amazon.
Yeah, for sure. So I do have one sheet here, very basic information, right? So one thing that happened, as Liam mentioned, was that this rollout came not just on present data, right? For the data that's coming out now. Amazon went back and changed all the data of the past year. So one thing to note, like if you have your data captured, make sure you save it from before, right? Because if you want some of the previous numbers, you're not going to have them anymore. Right now, anything that you download, which I just did for this brand, all this is the updated data that includes mobile versus browser, right? And the thing that we're seeing the most is for this brand, for example, almost 60% of their traffic is from mobile. This brand is in the grocery space, and for those guys, that's a little bit lower compared to brands we've seen. We've seen a lot of brands where their traffic from mobile is like 70%, 75%, much higher on that front. So a lot of things that we can look at, and then just in terms of the total number of sessions, the total amount of traffic, that number, as Lee mentioned before, was probably only capturing browsers. So all those numbers really inflated there. So really need to dive into also what our spend was during those times. For example, how did that impact our actual traffic, which we're using this as the real number now, because we do think that this number is much more accurate than probably the number that Amazon's providing us from before.
Wow, insane. No, this is a great analysis. And again, guys, what you're seeing on screen is raw data that was turned into a pivot so that Russell can quickly do an analysis there. Delaney, Matt, any other topics of discussion regarding the main subject matter here? I mean, it's just so much, I think, from an account perspective. An account manager does so much already, ins and outs during their, let's say, just management of the client, right? Just overall on data, from a data perspective, what does this do for on your day-to-day as account managers?
I mean, I think more so on the broader scale, where we kind of dive into the data a little bit more, is seeing where across categories we see the most drastic splits. I think while we're still looking into it and digging back at the historical data, where we're going to see a lot of like the most lost conversion rate when we come and see that old traffic come in, seeing where maybe we thought our conversion rate was great. With some brands, it kind of evens out where it drops a little bit just based on the additional traffic, but for some brands, it's going to drop quite a bit. And then that's kind of where we as account managers are going to go back to the drawing board, see where that conversion rate is initially a lot lower than we expected, and see where we can go make the needed optimizations, change the ad strategy, even the headline search ads, going as far as editing the advertising strategy to see where we can make those changes to make sure that we're kind of within that baseline conversion rate and kind of capture back what we thought we were at.
Definitely. I think it's going to be super impactful when we're talking about some of these bigger event-based sales that we're looking at, because the traffic spikes so much during this time. And the fact that that was all being missed out on and wasn't being captured at all by Amazon before, now we can take back those insights and really dig into that data and evaluate conversion rate more closely, like you were saying, Matt. And just overall, when we're looking at deals, I know that when we see lightning deals and 7-day deals, if we're evaluating those performances, sometimes Amazon was reporting conversion rates as high as like 60 to 80%. And that's because the mobile traffic just skyrocketed. On the deals page, everybody is shopping for lightning deals and 7-day deals on their phone. We weren't getting any of that information before. Now we suddenly have all that at our disposal, so we could see, is there a drop off in traffic when we're running some of these deals? And how can we make our listings more impactful so that we can increase that conversion rate even by 1 to 2%? Like for some of our bigger brands, the incremental revenue that can drive is just insane. And then lastly, Amazon just becoming more of a social media platform, elevating their brand stores and things like that. I know that we have a lot of strategies within Vendo to elevate that mobile look of the brand store specifically, whether it's that follow button that looks very small but is super impactful for brands that have like over 5,000 followers, for brands that have a really strong social media presence. That's where you can go and elevate your brand. For brands with extensive product lines, right? Like we have many brands that play in different categories, and we could elevate all that through the brand store, but then bring those customers back into the funnel, have them be repeat purchases for our brand, and then long term, our customer acquisition cost falls. So all good things. I don't know. I think it's really impressive that Amazon's rolling this out, but it's also crazy that none of this was at our disposal before.
Yeah, it's nuts. And shout out to our creative and copy team, because I think they do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes down to mobile first experience. And now we're seeing it from the data perspective. So I'm so glad that we're ahead of the game, proposing creatives that work really well, develop a perfect experience for the customer on mobile, and we're able to drive that conversion. Russell, last word of advice here as we close out. What would you recommend the audience to do as a quick action item, quick tip, as we end the conversation?
Well, as always, my recommendation would be really look very closely at your data, particularly your past data, right? The past informs the future, especially for event-based sales. We know that Prime is coming up pretty soon. A lot of people are already preparing for it, but also your other deals, right? Lightning deals, coupons, all that is going to have an impact, and all those numbers have just changed. So what you know before probably isn't true now, or maybe can confirm that it is true. So take a quick look there.
Awesome. Makes sense. Matt, first podcast, how did it go?
Love it. Can't wait to be back.
A little piece of advice for our audience. What would you recommend for those out there listening to this podcast to do, from a branding perspective? Maybe I'm not sure.
From a branding perspective, I would see if there are people that you trust their sort of input and show them, and kind of have someone take a really fresh look at your listings. Kind of, I know we can become biased when we get set in our ways looking at creative that we think we like, and just sort of putting on a different perspective, knowing that you have that data at your disposal now to really take a deeper dive into the creative, and just sort of don't get too attached to anything that you have on your listings, and see if there's that those things that maybe you can't see but other people can, and just kind of give it that fresh look.
And if you don't know who to ask, then you have 4 people here who are more than willing to help, and you have a whole Vendo team behind you who can offer a fresh set of eyes and plays in all of the categories across most of the Amazon portfolio. So we are more than happy to help, and I think that brands have seen with Russell's data and our copy and creative optimizations that typically take place within the first 30 days of onboarding a brand. You'd be surprised what you'd see with some of these conversion metrics.
Insane.
That's my pitch, Vinny.
All right. Yeah, that was a plug. You took it away. Guys, I appreciate the time. Here we have a great team at Vendo. Shoot us a question at hello@vendocommerce.com if you have any questions. I'm so thankful to have this team on the call today. We're always looking at new data points. We're always very informed in terms of what Amazon is providing us. And internally, we're creating masterminds, challenging each other's. And I just think that the Vendo culture is strong. And we'll continue to bring that on our podcast, informing you guys in terms of what we find. But very excited, and into the next one. See you guys.